And Juan, before we go to the phones and you put those headphones on, what is your belief about federal funding for NPR?
I think that NPR should have money. I think that people at NPR have to be held accountable for their words and actions. I'm to repeat, Diane. I'm a big fan of radio, and I think especially the whole notion of public radio and good reporting. So this is not an attempt to wipe out anybody, but it's so important to me. I feared that this would become an issue for right wing versus left wing, but instead, what I have experienced is that people on the left and the right have been supportive of me at this time. And even, when I was being fired, I was asked, would you have said this on NPR's air? And I said, you know what, it's in keeping with my journalistic ethics that I be allowed to say how I feel and that the listener or viewer can trust that I am sincere. I'm not saying something to be provocative, to be antagonistic. I am giving you a true expression of my feeling in a certain circumstance.
And here's an email from Liz in St. Louis, Missouri, who says, I'm a journalism student, and this incident has been a hot topic in our classes. What I find curious is Mr. Williams' role as a journalist. One of the paramount rules for a journalist, as we have learned, is to cultivate and maintain your credibility by broadcasting his opinion in this matter. Does Mr. Williams believe he can report on stories of the day, in particular stories that relate to Islam? Is it better for a journalist to publicize his bias when reporting? Can a journalist truly be unbiased?
No, I don't think a journalist can truly be unbiased. I think we all have real world experiences, life experiences, and all the rest. But here's the thing, Diane. When it comes to credibility, I think that the audience would be, in fact, more trusting if they say, we know exactly how you think, if it's pertinent to the discussion at hand. So it's a matter of, would you admit that you're an American as you are covering a war? Well, yes, I'm an American. Say, if you're covering a racial issue, will you admit that you are black, that you're a person of color? Yes. I think, in fact, for some people and in some circumstances, it may enhance the kind of coverage and reporting that I'm doing. It's not the case that because I'm human and have had experiences and have opinions, that I therefore can't do my job as a professional journalist and be unbiased and specific about news. That's crazy. That's not what's asked of you as a good journalist.
All right, let's open the phones to Arlington, Virginia. Good morning, Lee.
Good morning. It's interesting for me to listen to Juan Williams talk about his, quote, credibility. I go back to 1991 when he was at the Washington Post. He defended Clarence Thomas in the face of the hearings, and we now know a little more of the context involving Clarence Thomas. And in the aftermath of those controversial comments, of course, Juan Williams was censored by the Post for his sexual harassment of women throughout the Washington Post newsroom. 500 women signed a petition. He was forced to apologize for egregious comments and behavior. I was shocked that NPR even hired him in the aftermath of such events. I think he has a woman problem. He certainly, his comments about Michelle Obama were very different on the air when I watched them and in transcript from the way he described him on your show. He may not be a bigot, but he's got a very serious woman problem.
All right, thanks for calling.
I don't even know how to respond to such lunacy. I mean, clearly I had written about Justice Thomas going back to his days when he was working in the Reagan administration, and then subsequently I had done a long piece on him in the Atlantic Monthly about Clarence Thomas and about the idea of what an interesting and intriguing character, someone who knows, Malcolm X by heart and is now working in a conservative administration like Ronald Reagan's. And then this whole business came up about the Anita Hill episode. But even before then, people were calling me because I had written this lengthy essay about Clarence Thomas to say, what do you know about him? Is Clarence Thomas this kind of guy, that kind of guy? and I was just appalled by the attacks
Do you
on
have
him.
any concerns considering what we have now learned from Clarence Thomas's former mistress?
No. Look, I don't think there's any question about Clarence Thomas's
You
intellectual...
don't think he may have uttered a mistruth as he was testifying for his confirmation, when in fact the woman who earlier had this relationship with him confirmed what Nita Hill had to say?
You know, I've been in the midst of my own trouble, strum and drang here, but so I'm not fully familiar. But I think that from what I've heard from other people, she said that that Justice Thomas, then Clarence Thomas, was someone who made comments and liked pornography.
Interest in pornography.
Right, that kind of thing.
Interested in women's breast size.
Yes. Well, anyway, I don't know what this has to do with whether or not he should be on the Supreme Court. And what I said at that time back then was that people were attacking Clarence Thomas without really knowing Clarence Thomas, and that this really, if you look at the history of the Supreme Court, the history of Supreme Court justices, I do not think that this would eliminate you from consideration to sit on the high court. I thought that there was a lot of attacks coming forward from people who were afraid he would be a fifth vote against abortion rights in this country, and it was a partisan and a political effort to exclude this man and not look at his credentials, not look at his ability. And in that sense, I thought it was unfair. And I said this. I mean, there's no secret here. And then, in my own life that the listener was just speaking about, there was this, well, I think there was a sensation throughout the country with the Anita Hill Clarence Thomas hearing. And people in the newsroom at the Post said, Juan tells dirty jokes, Juan flirts, and Juan this and that. And so the Post appropriately looked and said, and you know what? And I apologize. I said, if anybody was offended, I apologize. But it had nothing to do with my journalism. I think, again, people will bring up anything they can. They'll throw all sorts of dirt. But the fact is, my journalism, my body of work, I hope stands for what it is. I think people can draw their own conclusions as to what's going on here.